A deadly emergency is unfolding tonight in the heart of the Pacific. Typhoon Tino, globally known as Kalmaegi, has slammed into the Philippines with winds over 100 miles per hour and relentless rain that has turned entire cities into rivers. Millions of people spent the night in the dark listening to rooftops tear away and floodwaters crash through doors as families scrambled for higher ground. This is a nation that knows storms. But even here, where resilience is a way of life, Tino has pushed the limits. More than 300,000 people have been forced to evacuate, thousands are missing, and first responders are fighting through raging water to reach survivors trapped in their own homes. This isn't just another typhoon on the map. It's a disaster reshaping lives in real time, and a warning that our planet's storms are growing stronger than ever. Typhoon Tino arrived like a punch in the dark, sudden, violent, and without mercy. Just after midnight, wind gusts topping 110 map ripped through the Visayas region. The sound was deafening, a low roar that grew into a scream as sheet metal roofs peeled away and power lines snapped under the force. Within minutes, entire blocks lost electricity, leaving millions blind to the chaos outside. Then the rain hit. Not just a heavy downpour, but a wall of water. Meteorologists later estimated that more than 10 inches of rain fell before sunrise, flooding neighborhoods that had never before seen water rise so fast. In Cebu City, local rivers transformed into violent brown torrents, sweeping away cars, motorcycles, and anything not anchored into the ground. Residents described the moment the water reached their door as pure panic. We didn't realize how bad it was until it rushed in. We just ran upstairs and hoped it would stop. Roofs collapsed in the wind. Cell towers buckled. Sirens wailed and then cut off. In low-lying areas, families climbed onto furniture, then staircases, then rooftops, praying their homes would stand long enough for rescue to arrive. But the night was far from over, because Typhoon Tino was only getting started. As Tino moved farther inland, the Philippines entered some of the most terrifying hours of the night. Floodwaters surged into homes so quickly that people barely had time to react. Chairs floated. Furniture overturned. Everything that wasn't bolted down began to move. Families rushed upstairs, and when that wasn't enough, they pushed through windows and climbed onto their rooftops, soaked and shivering. In Cebu's Bakayan district, flashlight beams flickered from rooftops as people waved urgently into the darkness, shouting through the roar of the storm. In Mandaue and Talisay, parents lifted children onto shoulders as water climbed above their waists. A single misstep meant being swept into the current. The rain was relentless, pounding like hailstones on tin roofing, drowning out screams for help. Emergency lines rang non-stop, but many calls couldn't get through. Downed towers and severed cables left thousands cut off from the outside world. A survivor later described the moment panic set in. We felt the house shake. We didn't know if the roof would fly away or if the whole house would go underwater. With rescue teams grounded by the storm's violent winds, neighbors relied on one another, forming human chains, passing children from hand to hand, refusing to let anyone face the flood alone. Through the darkest hours of the storm, hope became the only thing keeping families above the rising water. Typhoon Tino didn't become a monster by accident. It became a monster because the world is changing. Meteorologists tracking the storm were stunned at how quickly it intensified. Just 2 days before landfall, Tino was a disorganized tropical system. But the Pacific waters beneath it were unusually warm, nearly 2 to 3 degrees hotter than historical averages. That heat acted like jet fuel, feeding the storm and accelerating its spin. Experts call this rapid intensification a dangerous trend where storms explode in power just before reaching land. And it's happening more often. Warm oceans, stakes, more evaporation. More evaporation. Stak, heavier rainfall, catastrophic floods sound familiar. That's exactly what the people of the Philippines faced. Even areas far from the center of the storm endured torrential rain and storm surge up to 10 feet high, flooding coastal communities within minutes. Cities not normally prone to severe flooding were caught completely off guard. Scientists have warned that the Philippines sits on the front line of climate change, a place where stronger storms are no longer rare. They're becoming the standard. Tino proved that reality in a single night. And for millions living in its path, this wasn't just a weather event, it was a frightening glimpse of the storms still to come. When dawn finally arrived, the sky revealed what the night had stolen. Neighborhoods' unrecognizable roads swallowed by water bridges torn apart. And with thousands still trapped, the race to rescue began. Emergency teams launched inflatable boats into fast-moving floodwaters that reached 6 to 10 feet in some areas. Coast Guard divers braced against currents strong enough to overturn vehicles. Soldiers drilled through broken rooftops to reach crying children. Volunteers used kayaks, surfboards, even makeshift rafts, anything that floated. In Danao City, rescuers formed a human chain to reach an elderly couple stranded inside their collapsing home. In Consolation, fishermen turned their small wooden bancas into lifelines, pulling entire families to safety. Local radio stations became command centers broadcasting locations of those who needed urgent help. 4 people trapped. Water at the roof line. Infant and grandmother evacuation needed now. With cell networks down and power grids offline, much of the coordination came from word of mouth and improvised signals, white shirts tied to windows, flashlights blinking SOS from rooftops. And still time worked against them. Rising tides threatened another surge. Rain kept falling. Some areas were reachable only by helicopter, and even then the winds pushed aircraft to their limits. Every rescue was a race with no guarantee of success. But giving up was never an option. As the waters began to drain away, the destruction came sharply into focus. What had been lively cities and beachside towns only hours earlier were now landscapes of debris and silence. Cars lay flipped in the streets. Fishing boats sat wedged between buildings. Power lines drooped dangerously across flood-filled roads. Schools that once echoed with voices were left coated in mud and broken desks. Tens of thousands of homes, from concrete structures to bamboo houses, were either damaged or gone entirely. But the greatest losses were personal. People sifted through the ruins of their lives, drenched photo albums, destroyed college diplomas, children's toys floating in dirty water. Crops that farmers had spent months growing were wiped out overnight, threatening weeks, if not months, of food insecurity. Hospitals struggled to operate without power. Shelters overflowed as exhausted families searched for missing relatives or waited for news that might never come. And the emotional toll was visible everywhere. Parents trying to mask their fear, children quietly holding on to stuffed animals for comfort. Even as rescue efforts continued, a harsh realization spread across the Visayas recovery would take far longer than the storm itself. But despite the devastation, communities held on to something the storm couldn't destroy: the determination to rebuild, no matter how long it takes.
Gusto tayo magtayo sa ating kabayan.
Ito na tayong pinakamalakas na bagyo. No! No! No!
While the Philippines begins the long road to recovery, scientists are urging the world to pay close attention because Typhoon Tino didn't happen in isolation. It happened in a warming planet. Across the Pacific Ocean, temperatures are rising, feeding storms with more heat and moisture than ever before. This means tropical cyclones are intensifying faster, dropping heavier rainfall and producing storm surges that reach farther inland. What used to be once-in-a-lifetime disasters now happen multiple times a year. The Philippines sits directly in the crossroads of these powerful systems, ground zero for climate-driven storms. And Tino has proven just how quickly disasters can overwhelm even the strongest communities. But this isn't a Philippine problem alone. It's a global wake-up call. Climate change connects every coastline from Manila to Miami to New Orleans to Los Angeles. Rising seas, hotter oceans, and stronger storms will test the world's readiness in the years to come. So, as the Visayas rebuild, scientists, engineers, and local leaders push for the same urgent goal: stronger flood protection, smarter building, better preparedness, before nature tests us again. Because if Tino showed us anything, it's that tomorrow's storms are coming faster than we think, and we must be ready long before they arrive.
Ang makulit oh, tumuloy pa yung dalawang kotse na yan.
When the winds faded and the flooding eased, a quiet stillness settled over Cebu, the kind that only follows a night of unimaginable chaos. Survivors stepped out into a world changed forever. Streets they knew by heart were missing. Homes they grew up in stood cracked and waterlogged. The familiar had become unrecognizable. But in that silence, something powerful remained. Hope. Neighbors shared food. Fishermen offered their boats for rescues. Volunteers arrived before the news cameras. Even in darkness, compassion lit the way forward. Typhoon. Tino may be gone, but its impact will shape lives for years. And as the Philippines rebuilds once more, their resilience becomes a reminder to us all. Preparedness isn't optional. Climate change isn't distant. And survival depends on staying informed. If this story opened your eyes or moved your heart, please help amplify it. Like this video to support disaster coverage. Share it so others understand what communities are facing. Subscribe for ongoing reports on the world's most extreme weather. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Until the next update, stay safe, stay alert, and never underestimate the power of a storm.